Welcome to the Glen Mercer Show, where we talk all things vegan. If you're not already vegan, no worries, we'll get you there. If you are, tune in for health advice, information on climate change, and all the damage done by our most destructive industry, animal agriculture. We'll also talk cooking, theater, film, and culture. My 2 reasons for starting this podcast: to entertain, to inform, and to make people vegan. Oh, that's 3. Shit. Welcome to the Glen Mercer Show. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on all your favorite podcast platforms and at realmeneatplants.com. My special guests today are a couple from the town of Whistler, British Columbia, Natasha and Ed Tatton. They own a vegan artisan bakery there, and they've got a new book coming out called BReD. That's spelled BReD. Welcome, Natasha and Ed.
Thank you so much, Glenn. We're really happy to be here and talk with you today.
Well, it's good to meet you both. First, you've got fires all around you in British Columbia, don't you? So
we do.
Tell us how bad that is.
Well, yesterday, the BC government rating of air pollution was maximum 10. 10 plus is like the highest it goes to. That was us yesterday. Then it went down to, it said 3 overnight, but it's back up to 8. And so we're looking out the window at Whistler Mountain, but we can barely see it because the smoke is so thick. So we don't actually have any fires in Whistler itself, but we have them to the north, to the east, and to the south. So we're surrounded, and everybody's kind of getting out of the wildfire areas to come to Whistler to get away from the smoke, only to find that the smoke's blowing in here as well. So really, it feels like the whole of North America's on fire right now, and there's really no escape from it.
That's terrible. And Ed, are there people in Canada who deny that we're living in man-made climate change like there are people in the United States?
Yeah, I think it's we're kind of similar to California. We're kind of on the West Coast here.
Right.
We're in British Columbia, so I think people are a bit more open-minded and a bit more green, shall we say.
Yeah.
Environmentally conscious, a bit more aware of our actions and what food choices we make and things like that affect everything.
Yes.
Now
you're both... Go ahead, Natasha.
In BC, most of our power is hydro, so it's renewable resource, more so than a fossil fuel like gas and oil. But in our neighboring province, Alberta, they rely on the oil and gas industry as a huge income. So I feel like people that live there are more in denial of climate change as a real issue. And people in BC are a little bit more open to accepting it.
Yeah. They also rely on a lot of animal agriculture in Calgary, in that province, don't they?
Yeah, that's correct.
Now, you're both from the UK, correct?
Yeah, originally from the UK. We've lived in Whistler for 10 years. It's the classic Whistler story. We came for 6 months and we haven't left.
So tell us about your travels. You also traveled and lived in other places before BC, right?
Yeah, that's right. We were both lucky enough to have careers where we can travel all around the world. We love traveling and eating new food and meeting new people, experiences, everything that comes with traveling. I've worked in kitchens since I was 13 years old, and previously to opening the bakery, Natasha was an English teacher. So it was great. We were able to travel and work and get experience within our industries.
And where did you meet?
In a restaurant. We were both students at the time. So I was at university and Ed was at culinary school, both at the end of our second years going into our third years of studies.
Which town?
It was in Canterbury, which is a medieval city, which has 2 universities and an art college as well. So it's a very student-centered place. And then Ed worked there in one of the kitchens in a cocktail bistro kind of place. And I worked as a waitress and a bartender. And that's how we met. We were working part-time to support ourselves around our studies. And yes, I guess we fell in love. And
I guess not straight away,
But
but
he seems certain. She's saying, I guess.
yeah, I guess.
He's pretty certain. And so we went to Australia and New Zealand for a couple years and worked over there. And then we came back to the UK and we bought a house together in the West Country in a city called Bristol. And then we decided that we didn't really want to settle down and we wanted to go on another big adventure. So we came to Canada and then we never left.
So what was it about Whistler that you fell in love with?
I think it's just everyone's very outdoorsy, very active, always wanting to do, a new hike or a new adventure. We're right, close to the ocean, close to Vancouver. So we have the city right there, when we want a bit more culture, music and food. It's right there. It's close for us to get back. It's relatively easy to get a direct flight to the UK to see family and friends once a year. So we never planned to settle down, but it kind of just felt right. And we still, never say forever because new opportunities could arise. Who knows what this book will bring us. So we always like to keep open-minded, but for now, we love Whistler and it's treated us really well.
And when did the fires, were the fires a problem in the last few years or only this year?
We actually got married in 2017, and that was the worst year for us that we've ever experienced of forest fires. We got married on August the 1st, and it was a clear day. And by the evening, the smoke was coming in. And I remember it felt kind of mystical because it kind of had this kind of smoky effect as we were kind of getting started with our evening celebrations. And then actually the guitarist in the wedding band told me that he saw a cougar, a mountain lion, on the side of the highway as he was driving out from the wedding that night. And by the next day when we all got up, there was thick smoke everywhere. So I guess that was the animals kind of getting disorientated and trying to find safety. And from that point on, it was smoky until winter. And we actually went on a honeymoon from BC all the way through the province to Alberta to Banff, and the whole province was covered in smoke. When we hit the Rockies, it was clear, and on the last day of us being in Banff, the smoke was coming in there as well. And then we came back, and in October we visited a friend that was living in San Francisco, and she said, "Don't come, it's so smoky here." And we said, "Oh, that's fine, we've just spent the whole summer in smoke." And so we still went to San Francisco because we weren't going for clear blue skies. We were going to see our friend and eat loads of good vegan food. So we still went down there and visit some excellent sourdough bakeries. But yeah, I just remember that from August the 1st until the winter.
So the fires actually began the day you got married.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty close. Yeah, we have them pretty much year on year. I remember since we've moved here, they're always we live in a rainforest. So naturally they do happen, but more and more we're hearing of them being, purposefully created for some crazy reason. I don't know why anyone would do that. But also, from glass bottles being thrown out windows. Naturally, it can happen from lightning, but obviously that's all climate change as well, because we're having these freak storms come through and droughts and things like that. So, and also for us, a lot of the old growth is being cut down.
Yeah.
Whereas these big old mother trees would control these forest fires. Now they're cutting these beautiful old growth forests down and replacing them with essentially matchsticks. They're replacing them with this kindling wood. They're like, oh, we're replanting all these trees that are far too close together, far too fast growing, and it's just igniting the forests up even quicker.
I hadn't realized that that was a factor here.
It's
Mhm.
major because the old growth trees, they are so thick that the fire can't actually burn them down. So they stop forest fires.
Mhm.
And obviously through their root network, they keep moisture in the soil and keep
Right.
our plants
Yeah,
fed.
the government aren't really helping. We have a lot of amazing activists here in BC on the island, Vancouver Island, that are fighting day in, day out, camping up these trees, staying up there for weeks, months at a time, trying to protect our forests. And the government, unfortunately, are not listening. So, yeah, hopefully things will change. We just need, the government to wake up and start listening to the people of Canada and stop, forestry is important. There are certain ways of doing it sustainably, but the old growth forests need to be protected.
Absolutely.
They are not
Absolutely.
replaceable. You can't cut down old growth and think that you can plant new trees and it'll all be fine. It's those old growth trees, they're a finite resource. They are running out.
Absolutely. Now,
Mhm.
when did you both become vegans?
I became vegan in 2014, and I think I convinced Ed slowly but surely to go vegan by 2016.
It wasn't hard, to be honest. We've always been
Uh-huh.
veg heavy. I don't think
Uh-huh.
there was too much pushback. For both of us, it was health reasons initially, but like Natasha said to many people, I think it's the environment and the animals what keep us, on track and keep us staying vegan.
Because you can make health decisions for yourself that are easy to give up. Like you get, like sometimes I go raw vegan for a bit, and we'll just be eating fruit and loads of sprouted things, and that's great. But I can't sustain that all year round. I mean, we have a bakery, so
Right.
it's not sustainable to keep health choices up for most people. If you go vegan just for health, you'll probably definitely give it up, I would say. But if you go vegan and realize the environment and the animals and the connections, then it's very difficult to ever want to stop being vegan.
Now, when you say that you went vegan for health reasons, do you mean simply because you had learned that it's the healthiest human diet, the natural human diet, or do you mean that you were having health problems?
Myself, I was born with a heart murmur that they found when I was 5. I was going for just a general checkup as I started school, primary school. And then later in life, when I was 26, I had a stent fitted in my aorta. So always had cardiovascular issues, nothing that's stopped me doing sport or anything like that, but definitely major operation and therefore medication, daily medication, which for someone at 26 years old, being in a ward with other gentlemen in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, having pacemakers fitted and replacement stents, it was quite concerning for me and for them, to be honest. They were like, why are you here? There was no long-term research into someone taking 8 to a dozen tablets per day. And I wanted to do whatever I could to stop that. So started eating more healthily. I was smoking at the time, so stopped smoking. And then it just naturally, luckily for me, Natasha found veganism before me, but the research is quite clear about eating dairy, cutting out dairy. It's, blocks your arteries. And I remember going on my vegan journey, going to see a local doctor. They didn't want to know specifics, but they said, whatever you're doing, it's working. So keep doing that. And then it was just a snowball effect when I eventually got to Vancouver and saw a specialist. Again, they said, your heart is very healthy and keep doing what you're doing. So I've never looked back since then, off all my medication. As I get older, I almost have more energy. And I definitely think being able to work 12, 14-hour days at the bakery is because of our lifestyle and our diet choice.
Okay. Now, was your cholesterol high as well?
It was relatively high. I didn't consume a lot of dairy and animal products. So it was a relatively easy transition for me. But it's definitely dropped considerably since.
He used to like Snickers bars, and
yeah,
they were the last things I got him off the Snickers bars. I had to make like vegan ones and put them in the freezer. I made like almond butter, nuts, and I made a chocolate with cacao powder, coconut oil, and maple syrup. And it was quite a lot of effort making these trays of Snickers bars, cutting them all up and then putting them in the freezer. But it got him off the Snickers bars. And then the blue cheese took a bit longer. He used to like eating that at the restaurant before he came home. But eventually he gave that up. And we were at a vegan potluck in about 2016. And somebody asked Ed on the other side of the room from me. I heard them say, "Are you vegan?" And he said, "Yes, I am." And I nearly fell over to hear him say that he was vegan. So that was the day, I think, that, we claimed vegan victory with Ed.
Well, I think if you replaced his Snickers bars, you definitely love him. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. I don't do them anymore.
Where are they? No, I don't get them anymore.
Yeah.
Mate,
I'm going to have to try some Snickers bars and then see if my wife will replace them. So we'll see what happens. So Natasha, why did you go vegan?
Okay, so I mean, I'd been vegetarian from the age of 7 because I didn't like meat. As a kid, was forced to kind of eat everything on my plate, but the meat, I would just sit there chewing on it for hours. So eventually my mother said, "Okay, well, you're not eating it, so I'm not going to give it to you anymore." Then I grew up with this kind of label given to me, "Oh, you're vegetarian." And fast forward to when I met Ed when I was 20, he was a fine dining chef. He worked in a Michelin star kitchen, and these kind of places are really proud of sourcing meat from the best producers that look after their animals with the highest welfare standards and organic food. I know it's kind of funny now, but this is the philosophy. This is, how they think, and they source it as ethically as they can, and then they butcher and use every single part of the animal, and that is seen as the right thing to do and to honor the animal fully.
And they speak very softly to the animal before they slaughter him.
I know. It's funny to say now because we're both vegan and we're against all animal cruelty and eating animals completely. But that was the philosophy, and it is actually very prevalent in most fine dining places. And that's kind of honorable if you compare it to just mass production, factory farming. That's definitely on the scale of cruelty worse. So I understand that it's incrementally better to source free range and local guy down the road with a big field full of animals rather than a factory. But Ed was quite frustrated, I remember, because he wanted to show off all these dishes he can make, and I didn't eat meat or fish. So he started eating a lot more vegetarian food when he met me. But I will be honest, when I went round to eat at his mother's house, she did not know what to do, really, vegetarian. And I did end up eating chicken and some seafood, mainly to please other people.
That is love. Yeah,
it was bad. And I guess I didn't I kind of blocked out the fact that I didn't like meat or fish. I was basically putting up with it to please other people. And years later, in my late 20s, I watched a documentary about factory farming, and I didn't actually know that these sort of places existed. I never really questioned what animal agriculture was all about. I just knew that I didn't really like eating meat. And I learned about battery farms where they have the chickens in cages stacked on top of each other, and how cool it was. That was the first seed planted that I didn't like, the fact that I didn't really want to eat chicken or animals anymore. Then we went to Thailand when there was a huge breakout of bird flu, and I basically ate vegetarian the whole time. So I'm not eating any of that chicken stuff that's got bird flu. But what really cemented it was when I moved to Canada, I ended up getting a job as a ski school support worker. And I imagined I was going to be out with the kids skiing on the mountains. But actually, I was tasked with the job of being first cook in the kitchen of 800 ski instructors and kids. And I, for the first time in my life, had to cook meat, and it was all processed crap. It was like wieners and all this horrible stuff. And I started reading all the labels, like, what exactly is this stuff? And it was really disgusting. I remember the wieners were like 40% reconstituted pork and a whole bunch of other stuff. We don't even know what that is. And I wasn't comfortable serving this food. And the people I worked with at the ski school, they pretty much ate a whole diet of this stuff because it was free. And near the end of the season, they were all fat, spotty, depressed. And then at the same time, this organic raw food juice bar, vegan juice bar, opened at the base of the mountain. And I'd get the gondola down from work, go in there to like cleanse myself of all the disgusting food I'd had to make, and have green juice or smoothie. And all the girls that worked there were like glowing with radiance. And I thought, wow, like I want to be like these people. I don't want to be like these ski instructors. So they said to me, these babes in the juice bar, like, what are you doing at the end of the ski season? You want to come work here? And I was like, yeah, definitely. So pretty much went raw vegan overnight because I became the chef at the raw food place and had to learn all about raw vegan cooking, or not cooking, preparation. And, it just evolved to be an all-rounded vegan eventually, because I learned all about the environment, the health, just all of it, unpacked all of it through all the wonderful documentaries and resources that are out there, and eventually tapped into the whole vegan community that was here in Whistler. We have a Facebook group of about 2,000 members, and we used to have a lot more events, but then since the pandemic there've been fewer ones, but it's starting to get going again now, and opened a vegan bakery with Ed.
Well, there are many lessons in there, but one of them is don't eat animals even to please the people you love.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You have to eat with knowledge that you're doing what's best for your body.
I was just going to say, it's hard to sometimes, especially as a young person, I think social pressures are very strong when you're younger.
Yes.
And it's easy to block out these things and become unconscious if everybody around you is telling you that's what you should do and that's the right thing to do. And I think a lot of people that have tried to go vegan end up giving it up or struggling with it because they don't know other vegans. They don't have vegans in their family, in their friendship circle, in their community. And you just become this sort of annoying, fussy person. And you don't want to be that person. And I can see why people don't, always stick with it. And that's really sad. So what we need to do is shine our light, our little vegan lights, so that other vegans can find us in the darkness.
I agree completely. I've often said that there's nothing difficult at all about eating the vegan diet, especially a healthy, whole food, low-fat vegan diet. But what's difficult is other people. Other people present us with our problem. The Thanksgiving dinner and the pepperoni pizza brought into work, and the picnics with hot dogs and hamburgers, and you have your friends, people you love, and you don't want to join them. You don't want to be with eating what they're eating, and so you have to find a way to just stand up for what you believe and eat the food that's going to nourish your body.
Yeah, totally agreed. And I think also from a male's perspective, it is kind of like the vegan diet. There's a lot more females in that,
right.
area. And for me, when I meet another vegan man, there's an instant connection, and it's like,
right,
social media and speaking online and doing podcasts and things like this can bring you your people and more of a connection. Right. Sometimes we've got friends in the US and in the UK, all over the world, that are vegans, and it's refreshing sometimes when you connect with someone like that and you can relate.
Right. In fact, this point you make that there are more women who are vegans than men is, to me, just another proof that this is the correct diet. I mean, there are many proofs. We know that anatomically we are herbivores
Yeah.
Yeah.
in any number of ways. Whether the fact that we don't have claws, the length of the intestine, the strength of the hydrochloric acid in the stomach, and so forth. So we know that we're herbivores. But if that's not proof enough for you, then you have all kinds of nutritional studies. And if that's not proof enough for you, you have the fact that blood pressure is lower on the vegan diet than if you eat meat. And why would we be designed to have a high blood pressure? But if all that and other things isn't enough proof for you, if it's 80% women vegan and 20% men, what are the chances that the women are wrong and the men are right? I mean, where in human history has it been the case that the men were right and the women were wrong? That's never happened. So, I just think it's proof. I don't even think we need the medical studies. Now, tell us about your new book, which is called BReD. That's capital B, capital R, small e, capital D. So you've left out the A and you've gone with a lowercase e. What's that about?
So yeah, on our logo, actually, it says just above here, you can kind of see it. The lowercase e is still the same size as the capital. So it's just supposed to put emphasis on that it's a bit different, not just that we've forgotten the A. Obviously, my name's Ed. We make bread. And that's how the company started. It was just word of mouth, Ed's BReD.
Okay. And that's the website, right? edsbread.com.
Yeah, exactly. We were kind of already down the rabbit hole once we started calling it Ed's BReD, BReD. The shop's called BReD. And then unfortunately, we couldn't get the website. So it goes by a couple of different names. People will be in the bakery. I'm at Ed's. So we kind of wanted to keep it BReD. Tash always says, I didn't want it like Luigi's Pizza, but it can kind of cheapen a brand sometimes. So we just keep it simple, call it BReD, and then people ask questions. People talk about it. Why is it called BReD? Why have you missed the A out of it? So it's a bit of a talking point. But essentially, yeah, it's me. I make bread, and I'm pretty much at the bakery every day. So if you come and see us, I'll be there.
All right. Now, a lot of your breads are based on sourdough, right?
Yeah, we're a sourdough bakery. So we make a gluten-free loaf, which is made with oats, nuts, and seeds, but everything else is sourdough based. So slow fermented, naturally fermented, no baker's yeast. So organic Canadian grain, water, and Vancouver Island salt. So if we're going to use 3 ingredients, we're going to use the best ingredients that we can. Our salt comes from Vancouver Island and is filtered for microplastic. So, and the grain that we use is 100% organic and grown as close to the bakery as we can. So on the western side of Canada. And yeah, we're very passionate about making healthy, nutritious sourdough.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
All right, if you've ever wanted to show off your plant-based lifestyle and do it in style, here's your chance. We have some of the most amazing t-shirts, hats, accessories, coffee mugs, and more at shop.realmeneatplants.com. We have statement t-shirts that will bring a smile to everyone's face. I love the I want tofu tonight tee. Plus, we have podcast tees, Real Women Eat Plants gear, Real Kids Eat Plants, and Real People Eat Plants, just in case men, women, and kids didn't cover it all. Yeah, we love you and love that you want to show off that healthy lifestyle of yours. Again, check out our high-quality gear at shop.realmeneatplants.com and enjoy.
Now tell us, there are some health advantages to sourdough versus yeast. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So if you go to the store and you buy a loaf of bread, the chances are, if it's sliced, wrapped in plastic, it's going to have between 25 and 35 ingredients. So like I mentioned before, our bread, true, naturally leavened organic sourdough, is 3 ingredients. So what is 25 to 35 ingredients? What are those ingredients? Well, they're sugars, they're emulsifiers, stabilizers, sugars,
preservatives,
and then a bunch of numbers that we don't even know what they are. The average Joe is like, what is that? It's made in a lab. But those ingredients are in there. So when it's in your cupboard in 3 weeks' time, it's still soft and good to eat. And that's pretty scary to me. I want bread that does go moldy, that I have to either slice and freeze or eat it within a few days of it being baked. Our bread lasts 4 or 5 days in the cupboard, or if you're not going to get through it, we tell people to slice and wrap it up and freeze it. So yeah, there's a whole multitude, but we weren't making bread like that until about 60 or 70 years ago. Prior to that, for the last 15, 18,000 years,
Right.
making proper bread.
Sourdough was the original bread, and it's only in the last century or so that they've used other techniques, right?
Exactly. Yeah, to speed it up, to save time, to make more money.
And I actually read on Wikipedia, I read that one of the oldest sourdough bread dates from 3,700 BCE, they say, which is over 5,000 years ago. They excavated this bread in Switzerland, and it was stale. I mean, that's an old bread. I don't know how they recognize bread after 5,000 years.
Yeah, it's crazy, to be honest. Like, I've read a few of these sort of articles over the last year. I read one recently where they found a trace of a sourdough culture in an Egyptian tomb, and they were able to feed that dried sourdough culture and make bread with it.
Wow.
So it's pretty crazy, the microorganisms, what we can achieve, and the history that as a human race we have with bread. And like you said, over the last century, it's just been destroyed. But luckily, due to the boost in popularity, a lot of it coming from San Francisco over the last few hundred years, the French came over to San Francisco when there was the gold rush. And with that, they brought their baking skills. And that's where the sourdough boom happened in San Francisco, from all the French coming over. So there's lots of incredible stories, around bread and the culture. But ultimately, the reason that we love sourdough is just breaking bread with people, sharing it, friends and family. And it's the start of a meal.
Now, many people today have gluten sensitivities. Do you think that there are people who have trouble eating wheat breads that aren't sourdough, but that they can eat sourdough bread?
We have a lot of customers who say they have gluten sensitivities and that our bread is the only bread they can eat. So, I mean, we don't have these sensitivities. We have a diet that is predominantly whole foods, plant-based, and sourdough, and and a few naughty treats on top when the bakery doesn't sell out those things, or we're test baking. But this is what people tell us. Now, I did a lot of research for the book about gluten and flour and things. And it seems like the medical community, like the doctors that actually study nutrition, are pretty unanimous that only about 1% of the population can't digest gluten. And these people are referred to as celiacs. They have almost like a wheat or gluten allergy. But the whole concept of gluten is very complex. And I don't think many people understand what gluten is. We ourselves have experienced this many times when we've gone into cafes and said, do you have anything vegan? And they've said, the closest thing we've got is a gluten-free cake. And we say, well, that's not close at all, because gluten is a plant-based protein. And it's really interesting because a lot of people are also searching for protein these days, especially here in Whistler. We have a very athletic community. We're an Olympic village. We hosted the 2010 Winter Olympics. We have the biggest mountain bike park in the world, and people are hiking, biking, and everything throughout the summer, skiing in the winter. So people are very sporty. and they're all looking for protein. But then there's also this movement that's anti-gluten, and gluten is a plant-based protein, but it's not a protein. It's a whole family of gluten proteins that get called gluten. They get sort of grouped together, and there are different gluten proteins found in wheat than there are in rye or oats or barley. And this is really confusing because we actually buy oats at the bakery that are certified gluten-free, but the research says that oats do contain gluten, but they're different glutens than you find in wheat. So there's some that are called like gliadin, lots of other ones, but in our book, we've listed all the different ones that you can find in all the different grains. So first of all, when we think about bread, like Ed said, there can be lots of additives put into bread, and some people may actually be finding that they're sensitive to maybe the baker's yeast that's gone in there, but they just think it's gluten. So they just avoid everything with gluten. Then you've got things like Roundup or glyphosate. This is a really bad chemical that is sprayed on monocot crops, particularly wheat. It's very widely used in North America and also being used more and more in Europe. So this is used to kill all life except for the wheat. So obviously, if you're eating lots of food that contains glyphosate, eventually this is going to build up in your body and cause you problems because it's inherently a killer. So we opt for organic grains because these are not supposed to have glyphosate sprayed on them. Now, unfortunately, because of the way weather works and animals moving around, it is possible to contaminate a field. So you could have a bird drop a seed that's contaminated with glyphosate in the middle of an organic crop. But as far as possible, the organic farms are not spraying these these pesticides on their crops. So we try to source that as properly as we can from an organic mill who also believe in not using Roundup. So there's the sprays. Then you've got things like white flour, where we've sifted all of the bran and the endosperm is left, and we've just got this white, very soft, sticky stuff that is used in most baking that melts in your mouth and also has a longer shelf life. So a lot of, like, let's say Wonder Bread, it tends to be this 100% white flour. And at our bakery, we actually prefer to always use whole grains, not always 100%, because there has to be a balance between what people like and are used to, and then also what's going to feed them nutrition. All the vitamins and minerals tend to be found in the parts of the wheat kernels that are sifted out when they make white flour. And then the crazy thing is, in Canada and other countries as well, by law, you have to add synthetic vitamins back into white flour so that people get proper nutrition, which is crazy. You can just eat whole grains. It's all found naturally within the plant. So I think there's a big spectrum of bread. And if you look at something like a Wonder Bread product made with white flour, loads of additives, made in 2 hours or less, versus our organic sourdough, sourced with good ingredients, no additives, no preservatives, a whole 3-day process from start to finish, from feeding the starter to baking the product. You know, if you looked under a microscope and looked at the nutrition values, they'd be very different. And I feel like a lot of people don't understand that, and they could be reacting to any sorts of, it could be the chemicals in the bread, not actually the gluten. And so it's wonderful when people say, I can eat your bread, because it's obviously not the gluten then.
Do you explain some of these nutritional lessons within the book about gluten?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we try. It's mostly a recipe book, but then we have given the reader sort of information and trying to educate them into, if they're going to their local bakery, you know, what questions should they be asking, and trying to help them digest the information as best as possible.
Right. And the book again is called BReD, BReD. It's available for pre-order now. How did this publication opportunity arise?
They heard us on a podcast, actually. And so they found us, which was an incredible, email to receive.
This is Penguin Publishers?
Penguin, yeah, exactly. Penguin Canada, one of the biggest publishing houses in the world. I grew up reading, Penguin books. So it was a dream come true. We didn't even have to pitch the idea. To be honest, we were like, how are we going to do this? We're running a bakery, working long hours. Do we have time to write a cookbook? But it's the sort of opportunity that you can't really say no to.
They asked us at like the worst time of our business because it was in the middle of the pandemic, but we just won an award for how quickly we pivoted to selling bread online when we had to shut down. And then that's why we did podcasts, because people were seeing us as some sort of like inspiration, that we did a 24-hour pivot. There was no waiting around for us. We shut down the bakery on the Sunday. We were selling bread online by the Monday. So we got a lot of media attention for this. We were featured in Forbes. We won a Small Business BC award. And that's why Penguin discovered us. The editor heard us in an interview and then contacted us and said, hey, would you like to write a vegan sourdough baking book? And at the time, we just laid off all of our staff. We had reopened our bakery, but we were borrowing people that were maybe not given enough hours in their other jobs to come and help us. And then Penguin sent us this email saying, would you like to write this baking book? And at first I just closed the email and was just like, there's no possible way we've got any time for this. This is ridiculous. And then eventually I sort of mentioned it casually to Ed. Oh yeah, and like Penguin wanted us to write a baking book. How ridiculous is that? And then Ed's just kind of like, Penguin, wow, like I don't think we can pass this opportunity up. And I'm like, you know what, we can't really, because some people would send book proposals and keep trying all their life to try and get a book deal and maybe not get one, and we've just been offered one on a plate. So we had to snap that up really and go for it.
Yeah. And how long did it take you to put the book together?
They gave us a year to write it, and we decided to keep that under wraps for the year that we were writing, just so we didn't have the added pressure of customers coming in. And it's quite a long process. There's a lot of testing. We've got a lot of our classics in there. It's not just sourdough. There's a lot of cakes and cookies, a zero waste section, because we're very passionate about that. Things you can use the discard sourdough starter for, the chickpea water when you make our hummus recipe. If you have the aquafaba, you can use that as egg replacer. And then things to have with bread. So we've got sort of dips and accompaniments in there as well. So it was really a sort of collection of recipes that are classics at the bakery, like our sourdough cinnamon buns, things that we would love to do at the bakery, but because of equipment that we have, we're not able to, like sourdough donuts, and then celebration sort of things. There's a whole bunch of different things, gluten-free chapter. So 100 recipes. So it was an experience writing and testing and putting it together. But yeah, just over a year.
Now, how much or how little sugar do you use in your recipes?
We try not to make anything overly sweet. Like we think that the grains and the fruits, whatever the ingredients we're using, should be noticeable. And if you put too much sugar in something, then it can overpower the true flavors and also give you toothache or a headache. And some stuff is just too sweet, and I don't think we need to make everything super sweet. So we don't put too much sugar in most of our products. They're like, for example, as we're vegan, we only use dark chocolate. That tends to be higher in cacao, lower in sugar than maybe milk chocolate or white chocolate. So we don't put too much sugar in our products. And there are lots of savory things in the book as well. Like we have some incredible sausage rolls. Of course, they're not made with meat sausages. They're made with lentil, walnut, and mushroom stuffing. And they're really tasty as well. And then there's some recipes you can do, like burger buns. And then we hope that everyone will put a vegan bean burger in there, and things like that. So it's not all sweetie stuff in the book.
But if we do use we use organic cane sugar, but we're also big fans of, being in Canada, using organic maple syrup or coconut sugar. So less refined things, or even certain fruits or vegetables work really well, like bananas and sweet potatoes work as a sweetener, but also as great egg replacers, or apple puree. Yeah.
Do you use dates at all?
Not so much, because we try to keep our sourcing as Canadian as we can and local.
Mhm.
I think I use dates in the pecan pie.
Oh,
Actually.
yeah.
So that's another Canadian classic that I was more than happy to do R&D on, shall we say.
Didn't we put sourdough crumbs in that too?
We did, yeah.
It's a little sourdough touch in that.
What's your favorite dessert in the book?
Oh, that's like asking you to choose your favorite child.
Lemon meringue.
I mean, I like the lemon meringue pie because I just think it looks really cool with the blowtorched meringue on top. And I just don't think many people have seen vegan meringue. And it's just a delicious, like, classic tart that was inspired by Ed's early culinary days in a Michelin star kitchen in England. And I love the fact that he's taken something that's so non-vegan and made it vegan, and it stands up to the original one. It's just so delicious. So I love that. But there are so many. I love the chocolate miso babka. That's incredible. It's like a chocolate soft brioche bread.
I like that. There's delicious. A really good chocolate cake. It sounds really simple, but just a really gooey, rich chocolate cake. I've got a real sweet tooth, so I really like that as well. But 100 recipes, so there's a lot there for people to work their way through for all levels of bakers. We wanted to make it approachable for everyone and not just a coffee table beautiful book, but something to use in the kitchen and get messy. And
we have some recipes that are from our heritage from Britain, like the Bakewell tart. I'm not sure if you're familiar with a Bakewell tart, Glen.
I am not.
So it's pastry, and then it's frangipan, which is like an almond paste, and then usually cherry jam, and then we have dry roasted flaked almonds on top. And that tart I love. I grew up eating that, like far too many of them as a kid. And so that originates from a town in England called Bakewell. And the Bakewell tart is very famous in England. And so we've made that at the bakery. But then we've also included more North American influences like the pecan pie and things like cinnamon buns with cream cheese frosting that Canadians and Americans love to smear all over their cinnamon buns, much to the horror of many Europeans.
Whenever I visited England, to me, British cuisine was Indian restaurants. That's
true, yeah.
That's what I liked.
They say that's Britain's favorite dish is a curry.
Yeah. Now, Ed, when you think back to your years as a chef, a Michelin chef in fancy restaurants, preparing high-end beef dishes, whatever that means, how do you feel about what was going on in your mind then compared to now? And are you in contact with any friends who from those days? And when you tell them what you're doing now, how do they react?
How do I feel? I mean, I do feel upset about it, but I feel like it's all part of your journey.
Right.
I don't regret it. I can't regret it because I can't change back time. I was always conscious about that and respectful with the ingredients I was using. Yes, they were animal based, but I would say I've never lost that respect. It's just changed, and it does make me feel sad. And there were points, where we were butchering whole animals, and once I started on my vegan journey, I had to disconnect from that and work separately, and I was on my journey to opening up a vegan bakery. I still am friends with chefs. There's certain people I just won't talk about it with them, and I would rather just let my actions hopefully create some sort of change with them, that moving in a plant-based direction is the future and has to be the future, and just being as inspirational as I can be as a vegan baker, as a having a platform like Instagram to show people what you can do. that it's not like, oh, that's a vegan cake and this is a, you know, a non-vegan cake. They can be as good or better. You just need to think outside the box a bit.
Do your old colleagues from the Michelin chef days react favorably to what you're doing now?
I think so. I think they're pretty. I think there's an element of respect there that I haven't stepped away from. You know, there's a lot of chefs that I've worked with previously that are like, the hours are too long, the money's not good enough. Ultimately, they necessarily didn't have as much passion as I do. You know, as you get into your 30s and 40s, they have families, and it's hard on your body, on your mind, and everything like that. So the fact that I've stuck with that, and to a level that I've stuck with it, you know, maybe they're like, there's more money in fast food because people are earning less money. They can't necessarily afford to go out to fancy restaurants as much. So for me, opening the sourdough bakery I compare it to a Japanese chef that specializes in sushi or ramen. I've stayed within the food industry, and I've just chosen sourdough and baking as my specialist subject.
Yeah. You know, one of my ways to try to learn about the chef's life was the work of the late Anthony Bourdain, who, you know, he had so much going for him, but for some reason he frankly he hated vegans. He was an antagonistic to our way of life. And he was a charming, intelligent, bright guy, and I gained insights into what a chef's life was like from his work. But there was like this deficit that he was working from the beginning, from the get-go, which was he thought that food was dead animals. And he didn't understand that that's not human food. I'm hoping that just like you got your opportunity to write the book from a podcast, maybe there's somebody listening now who will give you an opportunity to be the vegan Anthony, and
I would happily take that role on, Glenn.
Get to go on holiday all the time.
Travel the world. And,
wouldn't it be lovely to travel the world, but only with real food?
Exactly. Food. Yeah, and just show people, you know, what is out there, because there's incredible things like you wrote the book with Happy Cow.
Edited that book, the Happy Cow Cookbook.
Yeah, amazing. You know, like you can use an app like that and find, you know, the nearest vegan restaurants to where you are, your location. We used that when we were in Colombia. We've used it all over the world. So it is becoming easier and easier to find vegan restaurants and support vegan, you know, restaurants and the food industry. So I just hope that the governments around the world subsidize, you know, certain vegan products to make them more accessible to more people. Because at the moment, you know, I heard a fact a few years ago that a Big Mac from McDonald's, the true price was $15. And this is, I probably heard this 10 years ago, $15. And actually they sell it for $4 or $5. But because of all the subsidies that they get along the way, they're able to sell it at that price and still make a profit.
Yeah.
So any hope is that, you know, they can help the plant-based industry more.
Or help farmers transition to plants. So maybe help them with evaluating their land to see what could be grown on it and be financially viable for them, and educate farmers on the trends of plant-based foods and how it's going up compared to dairy that's getting harder to produce. And, you know, there's a lot of the crop prices are going up. So it's making it harder for them to feed the animals. At the same time, people are starting to wake up and realize that dairy is not good and they don't want to eat it anymore. And they're avoiding it more and more, or they're becoming allergic. There's definitely a lot of people out there with dairy allergies. We notice it in our bakery because we have the only espresso machine in town that has never had any dairy go through it. And people that are allergic to dairy, they can't risk having a coffee out and about because they could be contaminated and they could die. There have been people that have died. I think at the beginning of the year in January, a lady in a hotel in South Africa used a spoon in a buffet to stir her coffee with some sort of plant-based milk, and it had dairy on the spoon and she died. That's how deadly it is. So people that have dairy allergies know that, and they have to avoid cafes at all costs. But when they come to us, they can feel safe that it's the right place for them, and they won't have that danger. And so people are starting to learn more about this, and they're looking for dairy free. So if we can help the farmers realize that there is money to be made and help them assess their land and get the right crops on there, then maybe we can move forward together.
And I hope that people will realize that there's a connection between 1.5 billion cows in the world belching methane and these fires that are plaguing us now.
There definitely is. The rainforest destruction is mainly due to putting cattle ranches in place of forest in the Amazon. That's what tends to happen.
Which is the most insane thing humanity has ever done.
Absolutely.
Well, Natasha and Ed, it's been a pleasure meeting you. I wish you great success with the book. The book, again, is called BReD. That's spelled BReD. The website is Ed's BReD, again spelled BReD. And the book comes out when?
November 7th.
November 7th, but it's available for pre-order now.
Just in time for Christmas, for all those Christmas gifts and Christmas bakes.
So everybody pre-order the book. Please subscribe to this channel and learn to bake sourdough bread and what was it? A pecan pie, Ed?
Yeah, it is.
Pecan pie. There's
pecan pie.
Mince pies.
Cookies, cakes. We've got it all for you.
All right. Thanks again for joining us.
Thanks so much,
Take care, everyone. This has been the Glen Mercer Show, where everyone listening turns vegan, regains their health, and annoys their friends and relatives. Find us on YouTube at the Glen Mercer Show and across all your major podcast platforms. Don't forget to subscribe.